Okay, I wanted to talk. So Ian was my client. Um, he didn't think the problem was with him in the beginning. That demonstration of the fruits basically informed us. He came up with that idea on the first day of the first workshop. And in effect, it guided us through a 5-year program, which he spoke about the suppliers reducing their prices by up to 20%. He had Napier and Blakely, the quantity surveyors, do some research about the price reductions that he incurred. He didn't do the collaboration for price down, but the outcome was he reduced his construction cost by 7%. And so over that period, $100 million of construction, he saved $7 million in construction costs. And basically what that was waste that was in the system that we didn't call waste at the beginning of the project because it was the cost of doing business. But as people trusted and they cared for each other, and they had the courage to speak up because they knew that there was an equality. They were all a piece of fruit, but everyone was equal. It created a dynamic that created value for everybody in the system. It was quite a remarkable outcome, which as a consultant, we couldn't keep up with what they needed. And so one of the summaries from that project was this idea that we need to think about human beings as people who think, they feel, and then they act. And hopefully all those things are consistent and congruent if our thinking and our feeling and our acting is consistent. In most organisations, I think it's fair to say most, they're driven by a culture which can be about fear. So if you make a mistake, you're going to lose your job. You're going to reduce your hours. There's a resentment that often lives in organisational life where people don't get on with each other. We're not conflict capable, so we have to build workarounds because Fred and Jim don't like each other. The other aspect is doubt, that people don't question whether leadership has the capability to take the organisation to the next step. That is a downward spiral, and most, if you're lucky enough not to know that culture, then you've been very fortunate. In contrast to that culture, what we created in this project was this idea of certainty. So where there's doubt, let's create certainty. And where certainty is, trust evolves and develops. And so what we're talking about is there's a high trust environment in the thinking realm of the people. When someone says yes, and they say yes to a promise, it means yes, and they don't need to second guess or duplicate or watch what's going on. They don't need to micromanage because they trust each other. And where trust evolves in an organisational system, within an organisation, where there's high trust, we start to care for the other person, in that when we make a promise that says, yes, tomorrow I'll have that on your desk at 2:00, I know that you'll have it on my desk at 2:00, and if you don't, you will renegotiate with me. And all of a sudden there's a certain hygiene in relationships that enable me to care for the other person and ultimately probably love, which can be a big task in organisational life. That's in the feeling realm. So feelings, think about values and behaviours that are focused on caring for each other. So the last one is in your actions. And what we did is match the fear that is often in organisational life with courage, the ability to make a stand when everybody else thinks something else, okay? And in an organisation where people are encouraged to have courage, often we learn about our blind spots and we rebuild the right path rather than blindly glowing along. So trust, care, courage was what we created in the project, and what we noticed is that created an upward spiral that led to people demanding certainty. When people made a promise, they kept it. People started to care for each other because they could see everyone else caring for them, and they could name things that they normally wouldn't name in other organisational contexts because there would be no value in having that courage. So they were the three things that came out of the project, as well as the $7 million reduction. So everybody won in that system. Now, what I observed in that system was a change in style, and this may be relevant to you listening. Most organisations operate with a hierarchy, and this first step one is just a hierarchy redrawn, in that you, the leader, is in the middle and you have your direct reports all around you, but they're not connected. So you, as the leader, are going to each one of those independently, giving them information and sharing some information that they share with you to others. But the system is flawed and slow. Okay, so everything passes through the manager. It's a management by control that we spoke about previously. Process tends to be slow, and it's driven by the person in the middle who's the leader, and basically the system works based on their capacity. Another step in that is simply to bring your team together regularly and connect them. So you're still in the middle, you're still the leader, you haven't let go of control, but you're now sharing some of your leadership because you've got your team connected. And so all of a sudden the interfaces of the key processes in a business are linked together with the leader, and we now develop one common view of the business, which then we can have one common view of what success looks like. But the leader needs to make a decision to share the leadership in this step and simply start to get the team together regularly. They can be stand-up meetings for 5 minutes. They can be nurturing some relationship between these people, resolving conflicts that might exist. Okay, but we move to a we, where the peers start working together and not everything is driven by the leader in the middle. Okay, but it does, as Ian said, he didn't want to remove himself, the red apple, out of the hierarchy until the system was created. So he didn't want chaos and anarchy. He wanted it to be a controlled process. And so at a certain point in the development of the new system, he stepped out. And as soon as he stepped out, it allows the possibility of the expert to step into the centre. And so there was this dynamic movement of people according to expertise, not rank. And that was the critical step. The third step in this process is, as I mentioned, Ian stepping out of the centre. Now, Ian can't leave the circle. He has to stay in the periphery, observing what's going on as a leader does, to ensure that the system is developing appropriately. Okay? Expertise determines whether someone steps in. You as the leader, if you know someone is the expert and they're not speaking, you need to invite them into the circle and into the centre of the circle so everyone can learn from their expertise. And what this creates is a dynamic movement, and this is why everybody can be their best and everybody is listened to, and the system grows and the business grows in the same way. So this step is the management or leader stepping out of the centre but not leaving the team. It's a different environment. If you get to this step, you can then apply this logic to outer circles of influence. So last week I was working with Linfox and Lion about the interface between their third-party logistics environment. And they are working as one team like this collective leadership picture. Obviously, seamless approach is the utopic view of organisations. So in the context of those 3 steps,